This is the AI-assisted organization podcast hosted by myself, Piers and Aalok, and my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla.
Hey, Piers.
So you're in London. I never know where you are. Lisbon, London.
Yeah, London this week. Going back on Wednesday.
All right, yeah. We've had quite a few events. So we had a Be the Business event last week, which went really well. We did our own event on putting AI to work. We had quite a good turnout, especially as a week's notice, and the football was on, so we're quite pleased with that, actually. I'm going up to the Northwest tomorrow for the great big legal offsite. So that's going to be quite interesting, giving a keynote on AI and applying it to the legal sector. So there's a lot going on. We've got quite a few more events coming up as well. So we do find if you can get down there to our events, please do so. If you're a lawyer and you haven't signed up to the great big legal offsite, I love the name of it, which is a Rob Hanna, who does a Legally Speaking podcast event tomorrow. There's still time if we get this podcast out in time.
Yeah.
So today we're going to cover, as we do usually, AI for business, so AI news for business. I mean, we say this all the time, there's just so much news, so just sifting through it and trying to work out what's relevant and what we need to cut out. And what we try and do is find things that are directly relevant to business and also things that might have an impact kind of down the line, things like technology, platforms, regulation, copyright, things like that. So hopefully you'll find that of interest. And the theme this week, so we always do a theme as well in the other half of the podcast. We're going to talk about my background is M&A. I used to be an M&A banker at Credit Suisse, which was then First Boston. That's when Credit Suisse was solvent. We're going to talk about M&A and also how you leverage AI to extract more value out of M&A or potentially be able to pay more for targets. And we're going to relate that to what Aalok calls the AI OS, so operating system, operation system, whatever you want to call it, which we think is a huge opportunity if you're thinking of building your business through acquisitions. So let's get into it. So it's quite interesting just following, in the last year, you've seen lots of unicorns rise. Some have disappeared already. And some are struggling compared to the big players who've got into bed with the big hyperscale cloud partners. So stability, they're kind of a change in management there. Now they've raised new funding. They've got a new CEO. Quite interesting that the funding, and these are the people behind Stable Diffusion. So, it's quite a popular, well-used platform. They've got a new CEO and raised more money. And this is from an ex-Facebook president and Napster co-founder, which is a name you may know if you follow internet history, is Sean Parker, providing fresh capital. And what amazed me, Aalok, is just reading these articles about it, was that the company reported less than 5 million in revenue in a quarter in Q1, which is tiny compared to things like OpenAI and other businesses. And they lost over 30 million in Q1 as well. And they owe $100 million to cloud providers, hence why it's important to get in bed with cloud providers. And they've got 170 employees. So you've already seen like Inflection AI disappear, wasn't it? The one that sort of Pi AI.
Yeah.
That was acqui-hired by Microsoft. So it just seems, doesn't it, that even if you've got these unicorns, that very quickly they can sort of get into trouble really quickly when they're trying to fight in this sort of market, given the other competitors with massive deep pockets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, open source is a very expensive game. Like Facebook is able to do it because it created all those GPU clusters for its Reels products and other things like this. I mean, AI is not part of its revenue model. It's got a very sustainable revenue model through advertising. But companies like Stable Diffusion and Stability AI, like they're trying to, almost offer something new for free. But the problem is, it is not free. AWS,
Yeah, you're right.
Google
You're right. I
Cloud,
didn't mention that.
It's massive expensive, to run and do the compute. So if you've got people doing, images for free, you're losing cash like every second, basically.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, did I? That they were going down the open source route, which increasingly is going to be difficult to fund. So we shall see what happens there, how that's going to play out. But I think over time, unless you've got a very robust revenue model to cover the enormous costs of these things, I don't think you're going to make it. So GPT-4 Omni 4.0 and Claude Sonnet, it's clear they're dominating the sort of vision language models. We talk about it all the time. These sort of models now have been able to sort of see, hear, speak. They can chat, obviously. They're acquiring all of the human senses. And in a recent analysis, this was by LM or whatever that is, Sonnet and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is absolutely amazing if you haven't used it yet, and GPT 4.0. they're the leaders in the sort of vision language models, VLMs they're calling it now. There's always a new acronym every week. And this is really important because, you know, being able to see, understand the world makes a massive difference in terms of how you can communicate with this technology and how it understands the built environment. We talked about it quite a lot, that robots now can use generalist models because it can understand the built environment and the world in which we live. And they did a test over 2 weeks. The feedback from 17,000 users in 60 languages underscored these models' superior performance. So, you know, Claude 3 Opus, these aren't quite as powerful, had strong capabilities in linguistic, and Google Gemini, Flash they call it, had a comparable effectiveness in sort of vision. You know, keep your eye on this. This sort of multimodal capability, again, is going to change things dramatically. And we're already, aren't we, Alok, seeing use case with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key thing to understand here is like everybody is kind of becoming aware of these models within the browser, right? Like you know, they can go to Claude, they can go to you know GPT and stuff like this. But what they need to think about is how you can layer on top of these. So, for example, like when Google Maps first came out, you know, okay, people can search what's here, what's there, but then it became interesting when you started overlaying house prices with crime statistics or school locations and crime statistics or whatever like this, and you can get different intel that you could never get before. Now with these vision language models, let's say you're layering a security camera or something like this on top of it, because we were talking with different businesses that, you know, operate in security services, or different people that work in different areas, or even like, you know, a cafe or a pizza place or whatever like this. You know, the AI could actually quality assure, it could even track what's going on, it could even understand, you know, like in terms of like, you know, is health and safety being followed on a building site or whatever like this. You know, you can actually have like automated systems which are counting occurrences from camera, from stills, photos, and different things like this, even in a parking, like in a parking area, to understand where the different, you know, spaces are available. Like, so there's so many possibilities, and really it just comes down to business owners thinking what is going to be a competitive advantage, and, you know, how can I unlock that, basically. But it's so powerful.
Yes, it's security. These things can now, on a generalist model, you know, it took you £1 million previously to teach you know, through machine learning and a robot what a glass was. And now you can say, look out for a male in a blue jumper and grey jeans, whatever it might be, and it'll spot them. It's quite amazing stuff. Let's move on. So one of the AI favorites is Synthesia. So if you've ever played around with avatars, there's things like HeyGen as well, which is very good. And Synthesia has made a lot of noise about their sort of avatars, which can be more complicated to set up. But you can actually go into the studio if you want to, and they'll actually scan you. So you can have a real sort of enterprise version of your avatar if you wanted to. And they did like a sort of an Apple launch of Synthesia 2.0. And again, they're kind of moving away just from being a pure avatar player, right? Because, you know, quite soon that's going to be table stakes. Lots of technology is going to be able to create avatars. So they're going beyond avatars and into sort of content production with the avatar at the heart of it. So if you think about now, and this is a real business use case actually, and I watched all their videos, so you don't have to. They've upgraded into more like a video creation platform. So if you're in business and you want to create a how-to or an introduction, or, you know, in your FAQ, whatever application you want to use, you can now create an avatar of yourself or someone else, a general avatar, create the copy, the content, the scene, the avatar. They're expressive now, so you can create video, because as we all know, once you record, you know, old school video, once it's recorded, that's it, that's your content. If you haven't got what you wanted, you haven't captured it, you've got to go all the way back to basics. If you've created a set and had a day out of filming and had a whole team, very expensive, it's impossible to do. So what they're saying is they're reinventing video production using existing templates. You can use your brand assets. You can obviously you can use the language model to create the content by using prompts and writing scripts. They've enhanced the avatar, so they're getting better and better. They're still like avatars, but they are getting better and better. And what they're doing now in the next gen, which is going to be later in the year, you're going to have not just the head, you're going to have hands as well. So they're scanning, you know, thousands of actors that are moving their hands and responding to different language and different scripts. So that's going to be quite interesting, and you can actually wave your hands around. And again, that's quite difficult to do if you think about it, in terms of how you move your hands. The way I move my hands, I wave them around quite a lot. Will be quite different to Aalok. Multi-language support, so improved language support, 30 languages applicable to each voice avatar. They've created an AI screen recorder, so you can now build in, seeding a how-to video, you can now build into it a screen recorder video as well. API integration, And this is fantastic for business. So increasingly, you know, I think if you're in the business of creating, you know, videos for corporates, how-to videos, whatever it might be, you need to start thinking about using this technology to create those videos, because I think that opportunity is going to diminish very quickly over time.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
I have seen one about a different use case specifically for this, but like that, let's say they take over a product from, let's say, from the Far East, from Asia, and let's say that they want to actually create a localized brand for Spain, Germany, UK, different places like this. With this kind of technology, you can actually create, you know, like brand assets. You can have an explainer video explaining the product in whatever language you want, and you can control and harmonize everything in that straightforward way. And then if, you know, new features come out, you can edit it and upgrade it in a very straightforward way. It's very good for those kind of like product demonstration videos, product explanation, also to do with, like, you know, employee onboarding or team training, different things like this. So many applications. And I think I like the fact they've got the screen recorder and the different elements like this. And if you use the editing a bit to be a bit like Loom, so you've kind of got the person in the bottom right corner and stuff like this, I think you can overcome the kind of uncanny valley of the slight avatar-like nature, because it's smaller within that, but you can just have much more engaging materials. So I definitely think that, like, everything just needs to be kind of upgraded, isn't it? From static to, you know, talking, from talking to, you know, guided, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And I think people who find those materials are just much more straightforward, it will just be much better, basically, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, the CEO of Synthesia, in his video, he had this quite sort of high-fluting sort of speech saying that we had the printing press, and now the world is moving away from the written word. We're moving into video, which, you know, I think I agree with you, actually. In many cases, it's far better. And again, as we always say, AI today is the worst it's ever going to be. So these avatars are going to be much better in 12 months. And eventually you'll get to the point where, if you ever saw the video between, it was Mark Zuckerberg and the memory's gone, the podcast Lex Fridman.
Lex
And they had
Friedman,
this they had this conversation in cyberspace between two avatars. I mean, they look like they look like them, basically.
But there's some very cool things that you can do. Like this morning, for example, I was using a running app, which I hadn't used before, and it basically guides you. So it speaks in your AirPods, like, you know, what you're doing, you know, in terms of walk this bit or sprint this bit. And I found it much more engaging than doing something just by myself, for example. But it's not going to be long before you have like an AI personal trainer that's watching you exercise, maybe, you know, and then it's guiding you on what to do next and stuff. I think the potentials and possibilities of that real-time guidance and that engagement is going to become very interesting.
But it's also, we talked about in quite a few previous podcasts about the form factor in terms of the next physical technology, and it's likely one of the winners are going to be glasses. If you think about glasses now, and you want this sort of AR overlay, you know, you might probably want some kind of face or human talking to you. It might be quite distracting, depending on what you're doing. And to create that, you're going to need a huge amount of video content. And the beauty of this technology is it's getting to the point now where, and they're already doing this, where you can create video on the fly. So that's quite interesting. And we'll come back to audio as well, which is kind of linked to this. Right, moving on. So Google's now introduced us, all the productivity players are trying to get you, hooked onto their AI. You said Microsoft 365 Copilot, and Google's now introduced Gemini into the Gmail side panel. I'm not a Gmail user really, in a couple of cases, so I'm not really too familiar with it. But I had a quick look, and basically they're trying to enhance your email management with AI capabilities, kind of things you'd expect really. Summarizing email threads, suggesting responses, drafting emails. The things you're already seeing in Microsoft 365 Copilot, and this is both on the web and on your mobile. Again, so is Microsoft. And it leverages this is Gemini 1.5 Pro model to give you more sort of accurate and context-aware assistance. So again, this is going to be table stakes in every productivity suite, and we'll talk about another one in a moment where people are trying to realize that they can't kind of just do one thing, because otherwise the technology eventually is going to kind of wash over them. They will kind of moving into sort of broader spaces, and this basically updates trying to improve productivity by enabling quick, informed responses. So not too exciting. I think Google again is still, they're still sort of struggling to keep up in a way, which I still find quite amazing actually. Right, moving on. Now, one we use a lot, and I think this is really interesting actually. Again, going back to how you change how you interact with content. So 11 Labs, and we use 11 Labs quite a lot. It's probably the best voice generation platform. They've created 11 Labs Reader app. So if you think about any content you want to read. It can be a book, I suppose, if you can get download it. It can be a white paper, a document, a scientific paper, whatever. You can now use 11 Labs and apply a really realistic voice that's going to read it to you. And it sounds human, it's got all the right intonation, it's expressive as well. So it means now you can kind of bring written content to life. So you can go running and listen to, as Aalok does, a scientific white paper while you're jogging along, and it'll read it to you. So it's expand. I mean, I read the odd book. I'm reading some books on AI, but I tend to listen to books. I tend to listen when I'm driving or when I'm in the gym. And now this extends that to almost anything, as long as you can actually get your hands on the underlying copy. It could be a play, it could be anything you want to, really. So again, and you're also going to see, you're already seeing this, things like Audible, because you're not going to need the author to read these things anymore. They can clone their voice, and they'll be very expressive, and you can turn it up and down as well, and they can just read it as well. So I think that's a really interesting, if not obvious, evolution of the voice technology.
Yeah, but you can listen much faster. It's very engaging. I was using an app called Speechify before for if you're traveling in a taxi or something and you want to listen to a large document or something like this, you can do it in a nice way. But I think absolutely everything's just gonna be more engaging now.
You're right. So you're right. This is a head-on, isn't it? Speechify, things like that. Right, moving on. So the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA, they've gone after these music generators. I'll come on to the sort of business point about this, which is, again, hardly surprising. Udio, and if you haven't used it yet, Suno, which is pretty good, actually. This generates songs for you, which are they're very good, quite amusing. And they basically challenge the company's use of copyrighted music to train the AI. So very similar to the ongoing litigation around text and access to journalistic content, for example. And the legal action raises questions about the legality of using copyrighted material in AI training. Now, the point about this is not really about Suno and Udio and the RIAA. It's the fact that I was on a call. We're doing an event with venture capital, sort of an angel venture capital network, coming up quite soon. And one of the people I'm on the panel with is a lawyer. And I was talking to him about this issue, actually, in a kind of roundabout way. And he made a very interesting point that if you're building a business, if you're building technology, you're building a model, you're building any kind of AI-driven platform, that if you want to raise finance or you want to sell it one day, you've got to be very, very careful about how you're training these things. Because what he's seeing quite often is that financing and exits are being stalled by the fact that in due diligence, when they're asked, how did you train this model? Where did the underlying data come from? And have you licensed it? When the answer is no, the investor or the potential acquirer gets the heebie-jeebies, essentially, and they get nervous. And quite a few deals have fallen apart. So just think about this very carefully. If you need to use data to build something, train something, fine-tune something, you need to make sure you've ticked the boxes and got a license. Otherwise, you might find yourself becoming unstuck quite quickly. So I thought that was quite an interesting kind of relevant point to mention that.
The problem we've got, right, is that there are some players that have just already disregarded that, and as a result, their technologies are much, much better. For example, on most websites, they've got that robots.txt, which basically will say either scroll, index this site or don't index this page or whatever like this.
Yeah.
Perplexity's, allegedly, Perplexity's, bots and a few other companies' bots disregard that and they just index it anyway, basically, right? So
yeah, it's kind of the Uber approach, isn't it? Is it illegal? Really, we can't do it? Well, we're going to do it anyway, and then we'll argue about it in court, which is what OpenAI sort of done. And then they're going back on in reverse engineering all these licensing deals.
Yeah, so the cat is out of the wherever it was before.
Yeah. Right, moving on. So this is another interesting one. It's a bit like, it's mentioned that the players now realize, a bit like Synthesia, they can't really do one. So Figma, which is, if you use Figma, it's like a design tool, really, very much sort of web, but people use it for everything. And it's kind of expanding. So they're now launching a new overhaul of its platform. And they've got a new interface called U13, catchy. And clearly, they're now integrating advanced AI tools. How advanced they are remains to be seen. Because they kind of are what they are, really, in terms of what AI can do right now. And they've redesigned the interface. They've got clearer icons, resizable panels, quick access, blah, blah, blah. But what's quite interesting is that they're trying to streamline workflows by generating kind of mock-up UIs, creating images from text prompts, which again, as I said, is kind of becoming table stakes rapidly, and then organizing design layers. But what's interesting is they're launching Figma slides, which is quite interesting, isn't it? So they're going after, Google Slides and PowerPoint. I don't quite understand
Gamma
why.
and a few other ones like that.
Yeah.
Basically.
So they're kind of launching, essentially a PowerPoint, which again, I don't know whether it's just people just sort of flailing around trying to work out how do we stay relevant in this space.
I think they're trying to like own that whole product mock-up prototype space, isn't it? Right, rather than just designing it in Figma and going to something else and doing it. One of the challenges that they've got as well is that potentially they've trained their AI on all the examples which has been created inside of Figma. And I saw some comments from people, and you'll always get these comments where they were upset that all of their kind of work had been used to kind of train the AI basically and potentially replace some of their libraries, because some people make money creating libraries of templates for Figma or other things, and they that's their business, reselling those templates and things like this. So obviously this is just going to cannibalize a load of that basically, isn't it? So
yeah, well, we'll see where that goes. What's happened to the Figma and Adobe deal? I must catch up on that, because I know Adobe's trying to reverse out of it, given what they offered them.
I think it fell apart, but we'd have to check.
Yeah, it did fall apart, didn't it? Right, moving on. So Google again, they've rolled out some major enhancements to its Gemini API and Google AI Studio. We haven't used this massively, have we? And again, focus on business applications. So this is the amazing thing now. So Google Gemini 1.5 Pro, the model now has a 2 million token context window. Now, I used to talk about how that used to be equivalent to all the Harry Potter novels, but I think we're now way beyond that. And what's important about tokens is that tokens in terms of text is it's about 2/3 of a word, essentially, something like that. But tokens in terms of audio, video is quite different. So the bigger these windows now, it means that now in a world where you want to absorb all sorts of content, it's actually quite important. But we are moving towards infinite context.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, being able to load in a video and say, give me examples of this within the video or spot this within there, that's going to become incredible, isn't it? Right? You're going to then be able to almost synthesize together different pieces of content from different areas. And Google really, they own YouTube, so they should have a massive advantage over all of this stuff. Imagine for example, within Google, you can search questions, and it always has those knowledge panels where it comes up with different things. For example, it won't be long before you potentially search different things on YouTube, and it would almost give you a curated play reel of different insights from different things or different people or whatever like that. I think there's going to be some very interesting remixing potential.
Yeah, it's kind of like, here's a video or a cartoon or whatever it might be. Can you create something for my business that it looks like this? I haven't quite worked out. I know YouTube obviously YouTube's enormous, and they do use that for training. But in terms of using that for generating video, I haven't really seen the benefit of that yet. You haven't seen a Google text to video generator yet, which is on like Sora and Kling and Luma yet. So we'll see what happens. So this has got all sorts of back end capabilities in terms of caching and JSON schema codes to streamline sort of data processing, which we'll be having a look at that. But essentially, this is about business use cases. They're doing this to help boost productivity and the efficiency, and offering tools so that you can actually integrate AI into your business across lots of different industries. So that's worth keeping an eye on. Right, so there is other news, but I think they were the most interesting ones that are relevant for business this week. So again, implement AI. If you are used to our podcast, you're a regular listener. We do get good feedback out. We've done quite a few events, and people come to us and say, love your podcast. So that's fantastic. Thanks for listening.
Always nice to hear. Thank you.
It is, isn't it? If you're new to it, download our white papers. We are going to launch some new ones in the very near future. AI training, we've got an AI academy, so that's really important. It's obviously often the first step in terms of your AI journey, because if you don't understand the technology, what it can do and how it works, it's very hard to kind of opportunity spot in terms of automation. And automation is what we do. So we've spent, 18 months now working with various clients and implementing AI. What we'll now focus on is what we call intelligent AI automation. So looking at your business processes, workflows, what people do, and we'll work with you to find automation opportunities that generate an immediate and material ROI. Then over time, we try and automate more of your business to create what this podcast is called an AI-assisted organization. Anything to add, Alok?
Yeah, automation and agents. So I think what people thought about automation in the past is maybe quite basic, but if you actually understand what's possible, and that's why we recommend coming to events where you see different demos that we actually do, you're now moving into the kind of stage of almost AI employees that can do different roles and tasks, which is really quite exciting. And that's going to lead nicely into our next section.
Yeah, so what we do is manage, it's like a managed service, manage AI agents, your virtual payroll essentially, which augment your existing employees. Which brings us neatly onto our theme this week, which I think is a really interesting one. So my background is corporate finance lawyer, M&A banker. I did that for quite a few years. And I've done quite a lot of M&A myself, probably done 5 acquisitions, 4 or 5 disposals myself, and never mind things I've invested in. And M&A, I mean, we can go into the ins and outs of M&A, but essentially, especially when you're mergers, let's call it acquisitions, when you're acquiring a company, and it's not really so much a distress situation, or it works in those as well, is what you're trying to do is make 1 and 1 equal 4. So you want to acquire a business. There's no point in acquiring a business, paying, the discounted value of its cash flows into the future and doing nothing with it because you're not adding any value. So think of it as if it's a do-up a house, right? You buy it for X, you spend Y on it, but it's worth X plus Y plus something else. And that's the value you create. M&A is the same. And also what you can do is create synergies. So you acquire a company, you've got replicated costs. It might be finance, it might be marketing. Typically this can be people, and you reduce those costs and then you create more profit. So you've got the same revenue, hopefully more growth opportunities. So sales synergies, which are more harder to define. You've got an overall aggregated cost base, which is smaller. So you generate more profit. And that's what you're trying to do. Now, what we've been looking at and working with a couple of clients on now is what we call the AI OS. So Alok's going to explain this now. So this is where you acquiring a company, you've created a platform, and you kind of almost like install it, don't you, Alok?
Exactly. So just to kind of touch on that one point that you made, when you've got a company which is let's say it's got 3 locations, for example, right? And you buy and your company's profit is, let's just say, X, and your valuation is, let's say, 5 times X currently, for example, or 10 times X. When you buy another business or another location, you can add that profit into your business, but then your valuation multiple goes up because there's a bigger amount of profit. So there's different dynamics here, basically, like by buying different businesses and adding that profit into your business, you yourself have a higher valuation. So that also gives you some arbitrage on where you're buying businesses. Now, to talk about the AI operating system, this is adding another dimension on top of that, because not only would you get a bigger valuation because your total combined profit is higher from the acquisition, you can also then decrease your costs much better, which will increase your profit even more. So what's an operating system? So typically in a business, for any location, you've got, most industries have very defined cost structures and almost like operating costs. And that would mean that, for every 100,000 in revenue, you maybe have, 2 people that are doing this task, and you've got like this level of processing, this level of admin in that kind of way. And most people have that kind of model. But what you can do with an AI operating system is you can start to look at, like, okay, we've got this revenue, let's add that into the business, but let's look at the cost structure. Maybe we've got like a note taker, maybe we've got like a secretary, maybe we've got like somebody that's doing, sales reactivations or different things like this. Which of these functions could AI agents or intelligent automation take over? And then what that then means is that you can then either reallocate people, or you don't need people as part of that new acquisition, which then makes it a much more dynamic and a much more cost-effective combined business, which can also be scalable, because then you're able to like scale up if you want to in a variable cost structure. So the AI operating system really is kind of like 3 parts to it. One part is the team members having the right mindset and understanding how to do their work in an AI assisted way. So that could be very simple things from, let's say, for example, let's say they're project managing, and let's say currently they have to read through lots of emails. They don't know how to do that. But if you have an AI customization setup, which is, let's say, for example, for any active project or any active client, it's summarizing the last 5 emails and the last 5 issues, even from phone calls on that particular client project. That's like one area of AI assistance. But you can then add on top of that, which there could be an AI agent, which is, let's say, for example, spotting, that like the due date for this was supposed to be here, but it's not happened yet, and it's sending an alert or a message to somebody else. So again, having AI agents which can actually drive or nudge or help things happen in a realistic way. Other things can be accounts receivable, for example. Like, for example, if it wants bills kind of like become overdue, you might have a team of 4 or 5 who are responsible for chasing, sending out emails. Again, you could then have an AI assisted, accounts receivable department which can follow up and do different things in there. And that might be AI agents which call or email people, but it also might be automations which actually looks at, remittance emails or looks at invoices sent out and is logging for different things. So the point here is 3 parts: the employee, the mindset and the skills, the intelligent automation, and also AI agents. And that becomes your AI operating system, which you can then leverage as you grow to kind of become more profitable.
Yeah, so in the core business, exactly that, what you want to do is to maximize your growth potential and optimize, minimize your cost base, right? So you've done that, and what you've created there is an operating model that you can now take and pick up, because you've been, you're ahead of the curve, and install it, if we use that word, in the targets. So again, as Aalok was saying, what you want to do is detach the old revenue growth from what it was, so you can actually increase it. So the revenue is growing faster. It could be, prospecting, it could be automating sales, even outbound call agents. And you want to detach that old model in terms of the margin. So we often talk to companies in different sectors, say, yeah, in this sector the margin is 30%, or in some sectors it's even 5% down to sort of EBITDA. And you want to break that essentially. So now your costs are optimized and your margin's greater. As Aalok was saying, if you're applying a multiple, let's pick a number, right, 10 to your EBITDA, that's great if that's the sector average. But what you want to do is grow the profit, so 10 times that number's more. But as Aalok was saying, you want to create that multiple arbitrage, and the way you do that, increasing your multiple, is a number of ways. One is by you're growing faster than the competition. You've hiked up revenue growth and your margins are greater. So if margins are greater, then you can actually attract a higher multiple. And also there's a lower operating risk as well, or an operating sort of cost. So by doing that, your multiple now becomes 12. So you've grown profit, 10, that's a higher number, and you've grown the multiple, that's arbitrage. So this really is about wealth creation. And also what it means though, in a competitive bid, if you choose to, you can use some of that extra kind of value you can create to pay a slightly higher price as well, to make sure you win that deal.
Exactly. So let's look at a real example. So there are many like roll-ups, which is like where like, an industry, you might take, let's say vets. It might buy, 50 vet practices and then say, okay, we've currently got 10 vet practices. We want to get to 50. What we need to do is build a central call center. We need to build a central compliance and audit function. We need to build a central, let's call it finance and procurement section to buy all the materials and costs in a good way. So typically, once you get to kind of like, let's say 8 locations or something, you'd be like, okay, we need to build an offsite call center. We need to build offsite central operations and all that kind of stuff. So your profit goes down as you have to build all those cost structures in. Then you can buy, locations 11, 12, 13, 14, going all the way to 50. But with an AI operating system, what you could potentially do is like create an AI-based call center. So you need less people and potentially have a flexible kind of model in that way. You could even potentially build an AI system which could do compliance and audit. So let's just say all of the kind of like record keeping for all of the kind of like waste transfer, for all the kind of notes, all of the kind of like policies and governance and all that kind of stuff can be centrally within one area. So then the real cost, which used to be your head office, which was 20 people, might only be 5 people, which then is a very real saving. And it also means the speed and the consistency of the approach is increased massively. So there's a huge opportunity. And plus also like in terms of like procurement. So imagine you want to like buy things centrally. You can have AI agents set up which will monitor the prices on 6 or 7 different locations, like different websites, different suppliers. It can even call them and check to see like, the latest prices. So the point here is you can really build a very real capability, which then means that like you said, Piers, when you're in a competitive environment where you're trying to bid for like a new location, you can pay more and still make more money because you don't need a full head office versus the other part, that company you're bidding against, which has that head office essentially.
Especially also this works in distress situations where there's the distress acquisition. You want to move quickly. They can be quite risky. You don't always know quite what you're buying. You try and do it in the legals and disclosure letters, but often you're buying it from maybe even administrator actually. And what this can do, because you understand the business and the model you've created, is just reduce operating risk. And that's something that anyone in business, especially as the businesses get bigger, something you're always trying to do. So think about this, creating in your business, no matter what you do actually, first of all, is understanding AI, what it can do today, right, where it's going, getting the training in place, senior leadership and your sort of team, and then deploying and designing your own AI operating system, right? And only then, clearly, obviously, can you deploy it in the targets. It's very hard to kind of build that bridge at the same time that you're trying to do it, because you can't model what that business is going to look like post-acquisition and post-installation of your AI OS. So it's definitely something worth looking at, and it's something we're going to be sort of talking to quite a few of our clients about, because a lot of people do want to grow through acquisition, and they can see this as an opportunity to change the way in which they do it. Whew. So that's quite actually a really big, interesting topic. We could even write a white paper on that. Whether we're going to find the time to do it, well, we don't know. But if you're interested in talking about M&A and AIOS, get in touch with us. You can find us at implementai.io. Right, AI of the week. Now, again, I play with lots of AIs, and we've mentioned some today in the news section, and we tend to sort of come back to the ones that are very good and really work. Now, people often use, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and you mentioned Claude, and they look at you blankly. Okay, so we mentioned it earlier, but Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the powerful Claude.ai model, is something that it's worth going to try, because in many ways, especially for document creation, especially big document, hasn't got kind of a lot of the like custom prompts in the background you might want, but that'll come, no doubt. It's probably even better in some cases than ChatGPT at creating documents, understanding documents, creating longer documents as well. So if you haven't used it yet, there's a free version. Give it a go. That's Claude 3.5 Sonnet. It's a large language model, essentially. Right, that's it. So we'll try and keep these short and sweet, because I know you've all got things to do. So look out for our demos. Aalok's posted a whole range of demos now on LinkedIn of AI agents, call agents, which are fascinating in terms of what we're realizing and discovering in terms of the capability of outbound call agents, not just inbound agents, looking at customer service, actually using agents to prospect. It's crazy what they can do. Download our white papers. If you like the podcast, please review it. We could do some more reviews on the platform of your choice, and please do share it with anyone in business you think needs to learn more about AI, especially if they're in M&A as well this week. And we'll see you again, same place, same time next week.
See you then.
This is the AI Assisted Podcast. We'll see you then.